Hi everyone, I'm back with the English language lesson. Again, on the program of TELE-ESKOLA. Just to let you know that on this second meeting occasion, our English lesson is going to be all about biodiversity. In our first meeting, we explored the resources available in and on around our nature, provided by our planet Earth in general, and we also had the chance of exploring resources that are found in Timor-Leste. Basically things that are part of Timor-Leste's natural resources. But today, as usual, within 10 to 15 minutes, you are going to learn what is called biodiversity. You are going to explore types of biodiversity such as species, genetic, and ecosystem diversities. And you will also have the chance to explore the different species biodiversity, something that is unusual if it is left unchecked, given that it is nevertheless known to have very close relationship to our natural resources. It is obvious that the greater the diversity of resources in nature, the greater the biodiversity is involved, and that the relationship is also often mutually reinforcing. All right, I hope after the lesson you will be able to be aware of how important and necessary is biodiversity for our life, and that species preservation is our common share of responsibility. All animals are part of food webs that include plants and animals of other species. It is depressing as we have got very little knowledge on what there are on Earth. Over time, we even have got absolutely no ideas about new discovery species by the scientists, and no ideas on which plants and or animals are disappearing before anyone could even record their existence. All right, I would like to start the lesson by asking you all this question here. Have you ever wondered on how many species there are on Earth? Well, guess what? The Earth that we call home does not become the residence meant only for us humans, but it also becomes the residence for maybe millions of other creators. Scientists have recently estimated that there are approximately 8.7 million species on Earth. They believe 1 to 2 million of those species are animals found either on land and or in oceans. And when we talk about animals found either on land and or in oceans, and when we talk about biodiversity, we need to involve these three important types of biodiversity that are mutually inseparable, like species diversity, genetic diversity, and ecosystem diversity. First, let's have a look at species diversity. It is every ecosystem that contains a unique collection of species and interacting with each other, or it is simply the number and relative abundance of species found in a given biological organization. As to population, ecosystem, and Earth, some of millions of species that we are going to explore shortly, and you can feel free to add. But remember, when we talk about the species diversity, it is more or less covering a number of species in a given area. For example, an island or a forest with 5 birds and 2 lizards is more diverse than an island with maybe 2 birds only. All right, now I'd like to ask you another question. But first, please refer to this picture. As what you are about to see in the picture, how many different species of animals can you see in this picture? Well, if you can tell me that there are 20 or maybe more different species of animals in the picture, then yes, you are absolutely correct. You are getting closer to what we call biodiversity of species diversity, because biodiversity is all the different kinds of life that you can find in one area. Animals like wolf, lion, kangaroo, salmon, tiger, hyena, wild dog, cheetah, camels, cows and buffaloes, bat, tokay gecko, tree frog, python, sea turtle, tiger, yellow-crested cockatoo, dilly pig. And you might be wondering, why is it named after dilly? Maybe because this is the pig that we often can find all over our capital Delhi, right? And then elephant, monkey, bear, giraffe, zebra, forest rat, bottlenose dolphin, polar bear, elephant, camel, parrot, eagle, cat, chickens, roosters, and so forth are animals that we can find in the nature in the world. Some are known to be native to our country, Timor-Leste, or animals that are typically found in and or around our nature in Timor-Leste, and some are not. Animals like lions, tigers, cheetahs, hyenas, wild dogs, elephants, donkeys are examples of known native species to Timor-Leste. But most importantly, there are examples of species diversity that we can explore throughout the countries in the world, also in Timor-Leste. Imagine if you lived near a land surrounded by forests and jungles and wondered how many different numbers of species lived there. For example, you might be wondering on hundreds or maybe thousands different wildlife living in and on around the forest or jungles near you. Hundreds or maybe thousands of wild deer and wild pigs, all types of snakes in numbers like pythons, and maybe other types of snakes like green tree pythons, and other types of green snakes, monkeys, and different types of birds like eagles, cockatoos, parrots, crows, peacocks, doves, sparrows, geese, pigeons, owls, bats, etc. Or if you live near the wetlands, like swamps, you might also be wondering on numbers of crocodiles living underwater or around it, numbers of types of fish, eels, tilapia fish, and animals that you can find in the oceans like sharks, whales, dolphins, different types of fish, etc. And while we are at it, we need to include animals that are known to be our domestic animals or pets. Most precisely, those species of animals that live side by side with us humans on earth, like horses, camels, donkeys, dogs, cats, goats, cows and buffaloes, chickens and roosters, rabbits, and many more, etc., are also examples of the species diversity. These domestic or pet animals, also known to have different functions and purposes to us humans. Some are used for producing milks and meat, some are used for companionships, some are used for sport, etc. And there are maybe wild animals that made pets like monkeys, parrots, cockatoos, and maybe pythons, or maybe crocodiles and fish. And you may be wondering how to tame these animals will require certain skills. Plus, there are maybe other unusual species of animals that cannot be seen with our naked eyes, or we'll have to wait until our scientists record their existence on Earth one day. Or maybe we can talk about species diversity on a small scale, like a forest, and then focus on a large scale, like the total diversity of species living on Earth, etc. So, biodiversity refers to the variety of life on Earth at all its levels, from genes to ecosystems, and can encompass the evolutionary, ecological, and cultural processes that sustain life. Okay, the next one is the genetic diversity, where it describes how closely related the members of one species are in a given ecosystem. As what you are about to see in this example picture. When you look at this picture carefully, you will be able to notice that it is a picture of 5 puppies. So here you can see that there are 5 individuals refer to the same species of animal as to dog species. You can see that among these 5 puppies, the size might be different from one another. Some may be very tall, some may be very tall in size. Others may have dark fur coat color or white fur coat color, or others perhaps may have different skin colors, etc. So you see, each individual has its unique set of traits, such as size, color, height, body weight, skin color, or maybe even the ability to find food. And these are examples of biodiversity, of genetic diversity. And another important type of biodiversity is the ecosystem diversity. Ecosystem diversity deals with the variations in ecosystems within a geographical location and its overall impact on human existence and the environment. Ecosystem diversity addresses the combined characteristics of biotic properties or biodiversity and abiotic properties, geodiversity. It can also be defined as the variety of different habitats or living places because it varies drastically, especially in size, and consists of diverse species living and interacting with each other and their environment. Alright, just to let you know that we are not going to do all the stuff concerning the study of biodiversity. A study on biodiversity can be very complex to us, most particularly when it comes to this specific subject. It is the biology subject can scientifically exploring or conducting a deeper study on this matter. But I hope through this short English lesson on biodiversity today, you have the chance exploring some of millions of different types of species on Earth. Alright, let's look at some species that are also available in the natures of Timor-Leste. Please also refer to the picture to see some of the different species in Timor-Leste I have listed. Wild animals that are found on land, snakes like pythons, smaller geckos and skinks, deer, monkeys and spotted cuscus, a tree-dwelling marsupial, yellow-crested cockatoo, black cuckoo dove, parrots, sparrow, pigeons, and crocodiles, wild pigs, deer, monkeys, and all animals that are available in our oceans, like dolphins and whales and maybe sharks, as well as sea turtles and fish, etc. We also need to include our domestic animals like Timor pigs, Timor dogs, horses, goats, chickens, and roosters, etc. These species are examples of our Timor-Leste species diversity. For some of you who live in the remote areas or in and on the mountains or basically away from the cities, will often see or meet some of these wild species or animals in the forest or maybe in the jungles near you. However, for those who live in the cities, will find it difficult to see these animals. Why? Because most of these species don't always live in the cities. Now, I also would like to let you know that there are also some different species that are native to Timor-Leste. When I say native species in biogeography, a native species is indigenous to a given region or ecosystem. If its presence in a certain region is the result of only natural processes without human intervention. There is no scientific discovery to define a Timor-Leste's indigenous species yet. Or maybe there has been one, but we just don't know. However, species like pythons, smaller geckos and skinks, deer, monkeys, and spotted cuscus, sparrows, and pigeons are defined as native species to Timor-Leste. Basically, these are the animals that are indigenous to Timor-Leste. But let me ask you all again, are these species still available in our forests and jungles? How often can you see them? I doubt that you happen to see only some of them. All of these species. What do you think? Okay, now let's look at some of our native species that are claimed for being under threat of extinction. There may be other species of animals used to live in our Timor-Leste jungles and forests, known to be our indigenous species, but as time went on, they were slowly disappearing until there is none of these species left. And this is what we call endangered species. An endangered species is a native species that faces a significant risk of extinction in the near future. Such species may be declining in number due to threats such as habitat destructions contributed by humans' activities, including deforestation for agriculture sector, urbanization, as in massive development for housings and urban buildings, roads constructions, the energy sector, renewable and coal, mining, and climate change, which is also known as the major cause for the loss of habitats to most species. The species or wild animals face these challenges for survival. Climate change, more frequent and intense, drought, storms, heat, waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, and warming oceans can directly harm animals, destroy the places of these species. They died out of being starving as most of the foods are destroyed. No shelter or place to live. For example, look at an example of habitat loss because caused by the climate change faced by polar bears. Scientists predict that there will be no species called polar bears anymore in 100 years' time. They claim that some populations have already reached their survival limits as the Arctic sea ice shrinks. The polar bear possess the character of being carnivores, rely heavily on the sea ice of the Arctic Ocean to hunt for seals. But as the ice breaks up, the animals are forced to roam for long distance or onto shore, where they struggle to find food and feed their cubs. So sad, isn't it so? In Timor-Leste, we also still have relatively abundant numbers of some globally threatened species, including the yellow-crested cockatoo, black cuckoo dove, Timor sparrows, and several other pigeon species, smaller geckos and skinks, spotted cuscus, and tree-dwelling marsupial, etc. These species disappearances will likely be caused by mostly humans' activities in Timor-Leste, such as deforestations for agriculture, a typical character that cannot be denied, considering that almost of our population produces food from way of planting. Other activities like massive tree destructions. People need timber to build their log homes and or their traditional houses. Random forest burning contribute heavily to the loss of habitats to these species. We also need to mention one of the worst activities that often contribute to the disappearances of these species is that we have a lot of animal hunters who often hunt animals for food. If this activity continues to happen, then one day our deer, wild pigs, monkeys, pythons, birds like eagles, parrots, etc. will be next to go extinct. And then climate change in Timor-Leste contributes a lot to the loss of habitats. For example, landslides due to heavy rains can overwhelm and even pollute streams and water bodies with excess sediment. In extreme cases, they can dam streams and rivers, impacting both water quality and fish habitat. Landslides can wipe out large tracts of forest, destroy wildlife habitat, and remove productive soils from slopes. There are numerous reasons why species diversity. Each species has a role in the ecosystem. For example, bees are primary pollinators. Imagine what would happen if bees went extinct. Fruits and vegetables could be next, and subsequently the animals that feed off them. These chain links all the way to humans. Various species provide us not only with food but also contribute to clean water, breathable air, fertile soils, climate stability, pollution absorption, etc. That is why we as humans need to preserve these species by reducing our activities mentioned earlier that often become a heavy contribution to the loss of these species habitats. It is true that decisions humans make that influence biodiversity affect the well-being of themselves and others, where a reduction in biodiversity diminishes the capacity of ecosystem to provide a stable and sustainable supply of essential goods and services such as clean air and water, and also reduces genetic variability, which could potentially decrease the amount of natural resources available for future use. All right, that's all about our lesson today. But before I conclude our lesson, I'd like to refer you to these two numbers of our exercises today. Basically, things about biodiversity something that we have just learned together. Okay. All right. Our first question is, please name 3 types of biodiversity. If you can remember, we have come through this part earlier, right? You only have to mention 3 types of biodiversity as in the instructions of the question. So what are they? Can you remember the first type of biodiversity? Okay, let's do them together. So they are the species diversity. And what's the next one? It is genetic diversity. Okay, and then what's the last one? It is ecosystem diversity. So these are the 3 types of biodiversity. Yeah, we have done the first question. The next question is the next one is the variety of species in a given era. Okay, we have done the first question, and the next one is the variety of species diversity. The variety of species in a given area is called. So what do you call a variety of species given in a given area? Species live in a given area. It is the species diversity. Okay, now moving on to this last question. It is for you to identify which of these animals is native to our country, Timor-Leste. You can see that it is a multiple choice task. Okay, is it A, elephant, an indigenous species to Timor-Leste, or B, camel, or C, lion, and or D, yellow-crested cockatoo, the indigenous species to our country, Timor-Leste, So, what is your answer? Can you see an elephant or a single camel or even a lion in Timor-Leste? What do you think? No, right? I have never seen any of these animals in Timor. So what about the yellow-crested cockatoo? This bird here. Happen to see it a lot or never? I used to see them a lot in my hometown. How about you? I hope you can still see yellow-crested cockatoo a lot more often, a lot more, where and whenever you are. Yes, we do. We have it in Timor-Leste's forest or jungles. To be honest, we don't have species like elephants, camels, or even lions in our country. These are very rare animals in the context of species diversity in Timor-Leste. We can only see them in other countries, like in Indonesia, or far away in Africa, India, and some Middle East countries, or even miles and miles away in Europe. Want to see them? Save up. Go for holidays. But first, you need to advance your English language, okay? So, the answer is D, yellow-crested cockatoo, the native or indigenous species to Timor-Leste. Alright, we have done our lesson about biodiversity, and we also have done 3 exercises based upon what you have learned today. Therefore, we have come to the end of the lesson. But as usual, before I conclude the lesson, again I would like to remind you on the WHO's continuing encouragement on the individuals in the world, including all of the individuals in Timor-Leste, and that is of course including all of you as well, to take care of your own health and protect others by washing hands frequently with water and soap or using hand sanitizing gel, maintaining social distancing, keeping a distance of 1 meter or 3 feet between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing, avoiding touching eyes, nose, and mouth, following respiratory hygiene, covering your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze, then disposing of the used tissue immediately. Seeking medical care early if you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, and staying informed and following advice given by your health care provider, national and local public health authority, or your employer on how to protect yourself and others from COVID-19. All right, you have been fantastic learners. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.
Sudah oras noloron, hal say na fatino.